Hey, welcome to the Explainer. So, get this. Did you know that one of the very first laws requiring schools in America was created to help children outsmart the devil? It's a pretty wild starting point for a 400-year journey, and it really shows how education has always been right at the heart of the American story, shaping and being shaped by the nation's biggest hopes and, well, its biggest conflicts.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to start with the religious roots that built the very first schoolhouses. Then we'll see the dream of one school for all start to take shape. We'll walk through the great school factory of the industrial age, witness the huge moral battles of the civil rights era, and finally land on our modern world of tests, tech, and some really tough questions we're still trying to answer.
Okay, let's dive right in at the very beginning with a huge question. The answer isn't about getting a good job or even being a good citizen. No, it was something much more primal, and it tells you everything you need to know about the mindset of those first colonists.
Believe it or not, the answer was to fight the devil. For the early Puritan colonists, education wasn't just about knowledge, it was literally spiritual warfare. They genuinely believed that learning to read was a critical defense against the forces of evil.
And this wasn't just some idea floating around, they wrote it directly into the law. In 1647, Massachusetts passed the law with, I think, the best name in legislative history, the Old Deluder Satan Law. The logic was simple. Satan's main trick, his chief project, was to keep people from being able to read the Bible. So if every child could read the scriptures for themselves, they could connect directly with God and beat the devil at his own game.
So this powerful mix of faith and literacy really sets the stage for our first era. In the colonial and early revolutionary periods, school had two jobs. One was saving your soul, but a new idea was just starting to emerge, that it was also about building a brand new society.
Early on, you had schools like Boston Latin. But let's be real, they were basically exclusive clubs for wealthy boys. The American Revolution changed everything. Suddenly, the question wasn't just, how do we make good Puritans? It was, as leaders like Thomas Jefferson argued, how do you create citizens who are actually capable of running a democracy? The whole purpose of school was shifting from saving souls to building a nation.
Okay, so the founders had this grand vision of an educated country. But how do you actually make that happen, right? How do you go from this patchwork of private, exclusive schools to a real public system for everyone? That question brings us to the 19th century and a man with a truly radical answer.
That man was Horace Mann, often called the father of American education. He pushed an idea that was completely revolutionary for its time, the common school. The concept was simple but incredibly powerful. Schools should be free, they should be paid for by taxpayers, and they should be open to every single child. He believed school could be the great equalizer, this engine that could lift people out of poverty and forge a unified American identity out of a nation of immigrants.
This slide just captures that shift perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way, exclusive, private, religious, and on the right, Mann's vision, inclusive, public, and focused on citizenship. But this idea of a common culture had a shadow side. These schools pushed a very specific, mainstream Protestant American culture. This created huge conflicts with new waves of Catholic immigrants, like those from Ireland and Germany, who felt like the public schools were trying to erase their own heritage.
Now, as America's cities just exploded with factories and new industries, the mission of school changed yet again. To serve this new industrial age, schools adopted a model that, for better or worse, is probably going to look incredibly familiar to anyone who went to a public school in the last 100 years.
The really big change was compulsory education. States started passing laws that actually forced children to go to school. And this wasn't just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was a kind of social engineering. It got kids out of dangerous factories. It taught them the discipline and punctuality you need for an industrial job. And yeah, it was a powerful tool for assimilating immigrant children into the American way of life.
And this all led to what we call the factory model of school, which you can see there on the left. It was designed for one thing: efficiency. You sort students by age, they move in batches when a bell rings, and everyone learns from a standard curriculum. The goal was to produce a reliable, predictable product. But this assembly line approach had a really powerful critic, the philosopher John Dewey. He looked at that model and he didn't see learning, he saw conformity. He championed the vision on the right, a school that was more like a messy, hands-on laboratory for democracy, where kids learned by doing and by thinking for themselves.
The next chapter in this story is where America was forced into a moral reckoning.
The central question wasn't about curriculum anymore or efficiency. It was about a fundamental promise. Who truly belongs in an American classroom? Who has the right to an equal education?
And then, in 1954, the Supreme Court delivered a ruling that would shake the nation to its absolute core. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. With just those 9 words, the Brown versus Board of Education decision destroyed the legal foundation for school segregation. It was a legal and moral earthquake, and it set the stage for one of the most difficult and important transformations in American history.
Now, Brown was the catalyst, but the fight for equality was just getting started, and it was met with massive, often violent resistance. But the spirit of that decision fueled other movements. Title IX in 1972 guaranteed that girls had the same opportunities as boys in the classroom and on the sports field. And new federal laws demanded that public schools open their doors and provide a real support for students with disabilities. Slowly, painstakingly, those walls of exclusion were finally starting to get torn down.
Okay, let's jump ahead to a time that's a lot closer to home. As we get into the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the conversation shifts again. The focus moves from access to accountability, and the tools of learning start to change dramatically, from chalkboards to computer screens.
So in 1983, this landmark report comes out called A Nation at Risk, and it basically sounds a national alarm. It warned of a rising tide of mediocrity in schools that it said threatened the entire country's future. This report kicked off decades of intense focus on standards, standardized testing, and school accountability.
The peak of this whole movement was probably the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. This was a massive federal law that made standardized testing the main way to measure a school's success. And while the goal was to make sure no student was left behind, it ignited this huge debate that we're still having today. Are we actually measuring what matters, or are we just teaching kids how to get really good at filling in bubbles on a test?
And then, technology just changed the entire game. The digital revolution, which was supercharged by the COVID-19 pandemic, forced the largest educational experiment in human history, as schools went online practically overnight. For some kids, it unlocked a new world of opportunity, but for many others, it exposed this deep digital divide, highlighting these stark inequalities in access to the basic tools you need for modern learning.
So, after this 400-year journey, where does that leave us? Well, when you look closely at the biggest, most passionate fights we have about school today, you realize something interesting. We're not really arguing about new things. We're refighting the same fundamental battles that have been with us all along.
Seriously, think about it. When we argue about huge gaps in school funding, we're echoing the unfulfilled promises of that common school era. When we fight culture wars over what's taught in history class, you can hear the ghosts of those old Americanization debates. The constant fight over testing, that's a direct descendant of the factory model. And the digital divide is just the newest version of the age-old struggle for equal access.
This whole history brings us right back to today, and to the questions that matter right now, for all of us. What should school actually be for? Is its main job to prepare workers for the economy? To create critical thinkers? To build engaged citizens for a democracy? And maybe the toughest question of all, who gets to decide?
Because here's the bottom line. The story of American education really is the story of America itself. Every classroom is a reflection of the society around it. A continuous, often messy journey of defining what we value, what we hope to become, and who gets to be included in the word we. Thanks for watching.